Ni No Kuni 2 Revenant Kingdom was developed by Level-5 with Bandai Namco as the game's publisher. It's the sequel to 2013's Ni No Kuni Wrath of the White Witch, which is fairly obvious based on the number 2 in the title. Ni No Kuni 2 isn't actually being co-produced by Studio Ghibli. However, Yoshiyuki Momose and Joe Hisaishi have reprised their roles from the first title, so there's still that Ghibli flavor in there. The game was released on March 23rd, 2018 for both PlayStation 4 and PC. 1 month later, and I've got enough confidence to say that this is a good RPG. I've played it, and I mean really played it, but I'm thinking you want maybe a little more evidence for me to prove my point. So stick around and allow me to give you the proof you need. The tagline of the game is very interesting. Revenant Kingdom, a kingdom back from the dead. The symbolism is pretty much there from the beginning. You boot up the game and see the President of the United States riding in a limo. Then a missile flies overhead and explodes. With his entire country in shambles, the President is then transported to another world. For those of you who've played the first Ni No Kuni game, a lot of this should be familiar territory. Not the same, familiar. The President's name is Roland, and he's been transported to the kingdom of Ding Dong Dell. Roland meets a young boy named Evan, who's apparently the king of Ding Dong Dell. Evan is a half Grimalkin, half human boy, and he's trying to escape the mice who are attempting a coup. Basically, it's cats versus mice. Even though he has no idea where he is or what's going on, Roland realizes that Evan also has no idea what's going on. So he decides to help Evan out, and together they attempt to flee the castle. There's a couple of close encounters, and in the duo's hour of need, Evan's handmaid Aranella swoops in to save the day. The trio use an underground sewer to escape the mice, but are eventually stopped by the leader of the coup, Lord Mousinger. Mousinger was the closest confidant of Evan's father, the late King Leonard, but the divide between Grimalkin and mice is too great even for Mousinger. It's also kinda sorta directly implied that he poisoned Leonard, so that's just peachy. Sensing his opportunity to become king, Mousinger commands his most powerful soldier, the legendary Black Knight, to attack the party. Roland, Aranella, and Evan manage to fend him off, but after a powerful attack meant for Evan hits Aranella, she's injured and close to death. Her last wish is to see Evan survive and become a great ruler someday. However, I think Aranella's gonna die, so I don't think she's gonna be able to see it. Having both lost his father and his handmaid, Evan is overcome with grief, sadness, and anger. After some self-reflection, Evan decides to establish his own kingdom, founded on the belief that people can coexist peacefully. He also wants the countries of the world to unite in peace so that his experience in Ding Dong Dell doesn't happen again. Obviously, it's a very difficult task to undertake, but at least the game is very obvious with Evan's motivations. Evan is trying to achieve his goal of revenants, and that idea will manifest itself in different ways as the story progresses. That should get you up to speed on the story, but if you want to get into more detail, I'll leave a time code in the video and you can skip ahead and learn more about the adventures of Evan. Aside from that, keep on watching, because we'll be talking about the experience of Ni No Kuni 2. Ni No Kuni 2 is visually enjoying, unless you have some sort of deep-seated grudge against anime. At its core, the game is a polished Studio Ghibli movie with 3D models, and I think that works well in its favor. It borrows from its predecessors and the experience from Level 5 to make something new. Ni No Kuni 2 takes advantage of its focus on minimalism. The game runs fairly smooth at 60 FPS because it's not super taxing on the hardware. One thing I will note is that almost every cutscene is animated in the game engine, and while some might be disappointed by that fact, it does actually help the game story flow a little nicer. I definitely miss the Ghibli-style animations because they are smooth as butter. It really brought that connection to the forefront between Studio Ghibli and Level 5, and you got really excited for what's about to come after an anime cutscene. But I guess that's what you get when you don't hire Studio Ghibli. The other visual style I need to address in Revenant Kingdom is the world map. Everything in the game is, relatively well-sized, proportional. The world map basically shrinks everything down to chibi size. Everything's a lot smaller, obviously, but navigating doesn't actually take as much time as you'd think. Most areas in the game will have a teleport point known as a trapdoor. Essentially, it's a travel point that can be accessed at any time, so you can jump around the world if you need to fast travel. It's kinda nice. Once you progress through the game's story, you'll be able to sail around in a boat and eventually an airship. Traveling in both is fun, but I gotta be honest, the airship kinda is a little more enjoyable. That being said, any exploration needs to be accompanied by some really good music, and right now we're gonna move right on to the soundtrack. Ni No Kuni 2's soundtrack was composed by Joe Hisaishi, who you might know as the main composer for Studio Ghibli. If you've seen any of the studio's films, you've probably heard some of his music. The amount of polish and finesse that Hisaishi brings to his musical pieces is still present in Ni No Kuni 2. I just really like the fact that at its core, essentially, he'll just take a very simple instrument or progression with something more percussive, and then as the song builds, he'll add something that's a little more emotive, something that kind of grips you a little bit more, makes you feel a little more emotion. Eventually the song will kind of swell up and all the emotions will kind of come to the forefront, and then you'll finally hear and see exactly what he's trying to express. That approach to songwriting enhances exactly what you're doing when you're listening to that music. So if you're exploring around, it's gonna be pretty free, very whimsical, a lot of fun. You're having a great time. But if you're sneaking around in the castle, it's gonna feel a little more tense. You're gonna feel a little more on edge. But that's what makes it great. That's why I love Joe Hisaishi's music, and I could talk about it for a really long time. There's one thing I need to address. Who decided to put factory floors in this game? And who decided to make factory floors sound like a goddamn garage band song? That's probably the only blemish. One song out of many really good songs. Not a bad track record. I'd say it's pretty good. Moving right along, we talked about the polish given to the music, but can we say the same about the user interface? I can confidently say that it's interesting. The menus are easy enough to navigate and it's designed well, but once you really start to peel away at the game, the organization starts to unravel a little bit. One thing I found kind of weird is you can't switch around your party formation or save in the main menu of the game. There's actually a specific menu for each of these commands, and they are assigned to specific buttons, but if you're going to be in your main menu looking around at equipment and items, why not just have an option to change your party formation or save? The main menu also includes information about side quests and other events in the game like monster hunts. However, it won't give you more specific details like how many unique skirmishes you finished or even completion list. You could argue that it kind of wants to keep some mystery to the game, but sometimes you do need a good way to track it without having to essentially write down everything you're doing in the game. For a game that's split between advanced technology and high fantasy, you'd think it'd be a lot easier to use the UI. That being said, I think one of the biggest pitfalls of the user interface is the kingdom management system, but we'll get to that very soon because right now we're going to talk about gameplay. The gameplay of Ni No Kuni 2 can be divided into 3 different sections. There is obviously the kingdom building, there are real-time strategy skirmishes, and the main combat action RPG fighting. We'll start by talking about regular combat. In the original Ni No Kuni, the fighting was similar to a real-time turn-based system. You'd have control over your main playable characters, along with these small little creatures called familiars. It was almost like Pokemon meets Final Fantasy XII. The sequel decided that was a little too slow and revamped the combat to feel more like an action RPG. You still have control over your main characters. There's 3 in battle at any time and you can switch between them on the fly. Each character has their own selection of 4 abilities, 3 melee weapons they can use in battle, and a ranged weapon. You don't really use the melee weapons all at once. Basically, each weapon will build up a critical gauge as you fight, and once the meter hits 100%, critical hits are more likely. You can allow the game to control this automatically or do it yourself. I left it up to chance and just put it on semi-auto. Using abilities and the ranged weapon will drain your magic points, which I thought was kind of cool. Rather than relying on having ammo for a weapon, your magic ability will make your bullets pierce through the hearts of your enemies. Restoring your magic points is pretty simple. Use an item or just do some melee attacks. If you thought that Bandai Namco and Level 5 did away completely with the Pokemon-esque familiars, you'd be about half right. The familiars have been replaced with these cute little supernatural beings known as Higgledies. Each Higgledy is tied to an element, and each one has their own abilities you can use in battle. Some Higgledies will also have some field spells to help you navigate around different areas. The Higgledies can all be upgraded with random materials so that their abilities can be upgraded. As a side note, don't sell any materials or weapons or anything. You will make lots of money in the game anyway, so don't worry at all about selling these things. You're gonna need it to make special weapons for side quests, upgrade your, loadouts, whatever. Just wait patiently, you'll make enough dough. I'll talk a little more about that in depth later, but just keep that idea in mind. You can also make your own Higgledies after a certain point in the game, which is kind of cool. It's not as deep as the familiar system, but if you know the elemental typing of a strong character, You can always change out your higgledy party to help you out. The game also features a more robust stats menu and a battle customization menu called the Tactic Tweaker. With the Tweaker, you can use points you accumulate from battle to affect various elements of combat, such as elemental affinities, EXP, item drops, and more. It's an interesting change in direction, but it never really had a massive effect on my gameplay style because Ni No Kuni 2 isn't a hard game. The recommended levels for fighting monsters, taking on skirmishes, and side quests, that sort of thing, is always just way too exaggerated. If you're within 10 levels of the recommendation, you'll almost always have an easy time provided that you know some strategy about the game. Essentially, the main combat is similar to a Tales game, without a lot of the complicated elements. However, it's not our only combat system. Since our hero Evan has decided to make his own kingdom, he's gonna need a way to defend it, right? Introducing the skirmish system. As we talked about earlier, the world map shrinks everything down. Since Ni No Kuni 2 isn't the most intensive game, using the main visual style with hundreds of full-scale models would cause a ridiculous amount of frame rate drops. Instead, the skirmish system basically looks like you're fighting on the world map. You'll have 4 different unit slots for battle. Each unit will have a weapon specialty: swords, axes, spears, staves, bows and arrows, or shields. Swords, axes, and spears affect each other in a weapon triangle. Swords best axes, axes best lances, and lances best swords. The 4 units you'll have make a formation around Evan, and you can rotate the formation to adjust to different enemy units. For example, if you wanted to fight an axe unit but your spear unit is out front, obviously the axe unit will obliterate your spear unit. However, if you rotate around and put your sword unit out front, you're gonna have a much easier time. Everything plays out automatically like any other RTS game, and it's fairly simple. Just clear the objectives on the minimap. Sometimes the game will interject this skirmish system into the main story, so just make sure that you train up a little bit. I do like the skirmishes, but sometimes they can be chaotic. There might be way too many units on screen and it slows down, or you might encounter a weird bug where your units won't even focus on a specific enemy unless you just click around like crazy. It's just weird, and it really shouldn't be happening in this kind of gameplay. There's potential here if they decide to revisit the skirmish system for a 3rd title, but there needs to be some polish. I would say the skirmishes are the weakest part of the gameplay. The last major kind of gameplay is the kingdom management system. After a certain point in the game, Evan will establish his own kingdom, Evermore, and with it comes lots of upgrades. Evermore has a number of different facilities that have different functions. You can have shops, resource gathering lodges, workshops, and gameplay specific buildings. But who's going to run these facilities? Citizens! The main part of running your kingdom is recruiting people to join your new kingdom and help build it with you. When you establish your kingdom, you'll have some people to run some areas and help you gather materials and currency. The currency in the kingdom mode, known as King's Guilders, aren't the same as regular currency, or guilders. It might annoy some people, however, King's Guilders are earned passively when the game's on, so in theory, you could leave the game on, make some bank, and then convert your King's Guilders into regular money to use on weapons. King's Guilders are used to purchase facilities, expand your bank account, upgrade the kingdom, and undertake research on various topics. Researching topics can be done if the citizens placed in a facility have enough IQ, and depending on the topic, the right skill to start researching. Doing lots of research will affect a variety of things, from material drops to craftable weapons to stats and much more. Each citizen has their own specific skills, IQ value, research stats, and preferred facility, so be sure to place them where they'll be their most efficient. All of this can be a lot of work though. I explained my opinion earlier on the user interface and how it can be a bit clunky. This is really apparent in the kingdom management system. For example, I can find out who is best suited for a facility based on a stat list, but if I need a specific skill for a research topic, I have to do that myself by going through the whole citizen list, which is really not efficient at all. There's a main menu that shows a list of citizens, facilities, and research topics, and it does allow you to jump to different areas a bit quicker, but I do think it could have been streamlined. As an example, if I want to research something, I should be able to click the topic and either start right away or show in the facility menu and the requirements I need first before I can start that research. The kingdom system isn't terribly organized, but it could be better. If you can keep all of this info I just said together, you just might get a kingdom as nice as mine. Better yet, you'll be able to do it without ripping your hair out about side quests. They're fun at first, but then they get really annoying towards the end game. Remember how I said not to sell materials, items, weapons, anything for money? You'll probably need them for side quests in Ni No Kuni 2. Usually, you'll have a few different types of quests: citizen recruitment, monster hunting, fetch quests are the most common. There's also a service known as Swift Solutions, which will allow you to trade in materials for tokens that can be used to recruit new citizens and find rare materials that you might have not found yet or can't farm in your kingdom. I find that Swift Solution quests aren't as fun as hunting monsters or finding new citizens, but are much better than just some random fetch quest. Most of the side quests are fairly straightforward, and as the game progresses, you would expect them to get harder. Sometimes though, the game will give you a side quest very early on, but the materials you need to find to make the quest item can't even be found until the post-game after the final fight. Or sometimes you'll have a multi-part quest with some arbitrary weapons that need to be given to an NPC, and if you sold your weapons for money, you'll either need to farm random dungeons and hope for the best, or restore a previous save like me, like my dumb self, telling you, don't sell your stuff. I've had 2 different occasions of this happening. The first time I had a save I could go back to, the second time I did not, so be careful. Aside from the annoying quests, they are still really fun, and if you're feeling a little worn out from going through the main story, the side quests will keep you engaged. Before we move on to the next section, I just want to say, do not sell your stuff! Seriously though, we'll be talking a bit more about the story in greater detail. The first part covers the overarching plot, and the second part will cover major spoilers. There's time codes for every single section right now, so if you want to skip over story stuff and hear about how to beat the game 100% and get those trophies or achievements, or have me conclude my thoughts, do that now. Right now. The last story thing we just talked about was Evan promising Aranella he would make a peaceful kingdom with no war and bloodshed. However, in order to become a king in the world of Ni No Kuni, Evan needs his very own kingmaker. Kingmakers are essentially giant supernatural beings that protect the kingdoms of the realm. They have a special bond with their ruler that awakens their hidden potential. With this in mind, Evan and Roland head towards a small island where there's rumored to be a kingmaker. However, they get kidnapped by sky pirates in the mountains and are basically gonna get killed. Somehow though, Evan talks their way out of death after hearing that the chief's daughter, Tanny, was kidnapped. Evan offers to save her with Roland's help. After being saved, Tanny decides to join the adventure, and now we have a full party. The trio head to the island, and Evan goes through the Kingmaker trial, which is actually just this big puzzle that retells the story of Ni No Kuni. In hindsight, it was a good puzzle, and I wish I had more. Evan then has to fight a giant monster to prove himself, and his prize for winning is a pack of walking, talking French fries. Well, okay, I understand, that's a bit of hyperbole. He has a face too. This spunky spud introduces itself as Lofty, and he's Evan's new kingmaker. When I said giant supernatural beings, I should have said with one exception. The new king and kingmaker form their bond over a stick, albeit with some resistance from Lofty. But hey, now we can make a kingdom because we got the kingmaker. I almost feel like this whole thing was a plot device to have a sidekick, and honestly, I'm not mad about it. Lofty is similar to Drippy from the first Ni No Kuni, but I find he actually helps Evan come a bit more out of his shell and find his own confidence, which really does help character development. Also, Lofty has his own funny moments as well.
Boy, project! You are not in a cupboard, you are on the stage! Now pucker up, my boy!
Time to go in for the kill!
The party is now quite sizable, and after Tanny's dad, Chief Batu, offers his entire clan as new kingdom citizens, there's a desperate need for vacant land. The Sky Pirates point out a space in the Heartlands, just past their den in the mountains, and Evan decides to build his new settlement. He names it Evermore, after a fantasy land in one of his childhood stories. After assigning everyone a post in Evermore, Evan consults with Roland and concludes that he'll need everyone in the world to agree to peace. With this in mind, Roland creates the Declaration of Interdependence. Looks like someone's borrowing a little bit from being president. Basically, the agreement just says, yo, no war, just peace, my dude. The majority of the story revolves around the declaration, with Evan and crew traveling around to convince the rulers of each realm to agree to the declaration. To fulfill this, Evan needs agreements from the gambling nation of Goldpaw, the sea nation of Hydropolis, the tech realm of Broadleaf, and Evan's old stomping grounds, Ding Dong Dell. Obviously, like any RPG, there's nonsense in each kingdom that needs to be solved first. The game pokes fun at itself to keep it interesting. At a certain point, you'll need to research information from the library in Goldpaw, but the librarian will only let you go in if you do a multi-part quest. The eventual goal is a tube of lipstick. I can't make this up. even if I tried. It's a lighthearted moment reminiscent of older Studio Ghibli films. As they go on their travels, the party meets like-minded individuals who join them for a shared cause. Leander from Hydropolis wants to expand his kingdom's worldview, and Bracken Meadows from Broadleaf wants to expand the technological realm of Evermore. With the addition of new party members, Evan begins to learn about the right approach to rule and how he can essentially become a better person. There's also this really weird self-reflection cutscene after every major story arc where Evan talks to this random kid about what he's experienced and what he'll soon experience. It's odd, but it helps the player relate more to Evan's personal growth. With all this said, does it feel like there's something missing here, like some kind of overarching conflict? We're gonna talk about that right now. So, major story spoilers, skip ahead if you don't want to know about them. So, while Evan's trying to get each nation to sign the Declaration of Interdependence, there's another person running around trying to steal each ruler's Kingsmaker. That man is Dalaran, and he's trying to use the power of the Kingsmakers to revive a beast known as the Horned One, a monster that absorbed the kingdom of Allegoria, which was plunged into darkness thousands of years ago. It makes a lot more sense when you find out Dalaran is the ruler of Allegoria. Despite the efforts of our hero and his friends, Dalaran manages to succeed and take control of all the Kingsmakers. So Evan must literally unite the world to fight in a massive skirmish battle to stop the corrupted Kingmakers, Dalaran, and the Horned One. Oh, and he also has to find the legendary weapon Mornstar to be able to fight the Horned One. They manage to defeat the Kingmakers, and the main party takes on the Horned One in a very easy fight. I might have buffed my party a little bit, not gonna lie. After defeating the Horned One, Evan and friends enter inside its belly to find Dalaran, who reveals how Mr. President Roland was summoned to this world from his own. Essentially, Dalaran and Roland's souls are linked, and since they share the same fate of watching their kingdoms be destroyed, Dalaran wants to use Roland to save his kingdom and not die. So if Dalaran dies, Roland dies. Also, Dalaran is in love with his kingmaker, Alessandra, which really only just adds another reason on the checklist of here's why I want to revive Allegoria. Dalaran fights the party and is defeated. Once this happens, the Horned One kinda goes a little wild, and with the last of his might, Dalaran helps the party travel to fight the final boss. It is a really fun boss fight, there's lots of action going on, and it's really enjoyable just taking down the Horned One. I just wish that Lofty had some crazy dragon powers to kill the Horned One. Oh, right, I forgot to mention the dragon. The dragon here, and the pack of fries are all Lofty. They're all the same thing. After the final fight, there's a cutscene between Alessandra and Dalaran where Alessandra explains that after they fell in love, she lost her Kingmaker powers and the amount of power that was left over manifested into the Horned One. So Alessandra needed to hold its power suppressed so that it didn't go rampant and destroy the world. But now that it's gone, she doesn't have to, but then she disappears. Yay? The next cutscene shows Dalaran talking with the party where he basically regrets everything he did. Evan tells him that there's still hope for Allegoria, and Dalaran hates himself a little bit less. And with that, the world is saved! Evan gets his own crown and parade and is the savior of the world. It's happy endings for everyone. Wait, I didn't mean it like that, but oh, wait, hold on. No. Don't, no, Roland's not disappearing. Roland is not disappearing. This is not a happy ending. I repeat, this is not a happy ending. Since Evan has matured into a great king, Roland's work here is done, and he returns back to his own world. As we get closer to the credits, it's revealed that the boy in Evan's self-reflecting dreams is actually his son Ferdinand, and is passing along knowledge that was given to him by future Evan. I feel like it would have made a lot more sense for this to be a manifestation of Aranella, but listen, I'm fine with it, I don't care. Time travel's fun. Anyway, Ferdinand expanded Evan's goals and literally united the damn world. But the real question here, who is Ferdinand's mom? After the final fight, the game brings you back to before the fight, so you can finish up side quests, achievements, and whatnot. There's a couple of side quests and citizens that are only in the post-game and should add a little more challenge to your playthrough. Let's talk about getting 100% of the achievements or trophies, depending on if you're playing on PS4 or PC. The game is weird in that actually getting the platinum trophy or final achievement doesn't require doing 100% of everything in the game. To start out, there's a lot of trophies that you'll pretty much get just by playing the game without doing any extra stuff. Then there's a few trophies you'll get through playing the game normally and breaking a lot of pots. For a lot of the crafting or goal-related achievements, it's mostly making 50 different kinds of an item type or finding 50 different unique things. Like with Armor Ace, you just need to make 50 unique armor pieces or accessories, whereas Triple Threat wants to see you find 50 different trapdoors. The game also has trophies for the Kingdom Management System. You'll need to make it to the post-game to get a few of those, as well as clearing citizen requirement side quests to build up your population. If you get stuck, remember that Swift Solutions will have citizen offers as well. Now onto the harder achievements. Royal Treasurer is a bit hard if you don't learn Spell Lock, so make sure to learn it at the Spellworks, fly around, and open the blue chests. Sidetracked and Beside Yourself should come really easily if you're doing your side quest. Just don't sell your stuff, you're gonna need it later! No Downside takes a bit more effort as you'll need to clear 150 of the game's 175 side quests. There are a lot of side quests based around recruiting citizens or doing skirmishes, so be sure to do those for certain because you'll need them for other trophies or achievements. But there is some leeway if you're missing some random items, which is nice. If you're also doing the errands for Swift Solutions, All About the Errands and Night Errand will also be achieved. Wide Awake and Ball Boy kinda suck, and personally I just grinded through Dreamer's Mazes and just hoped that Lofty would give me a bunch of Awakening Orbs. Wide Awake is actually much easier if you grind the final boss over and over, as you'll have many opportunities to be awakened, but to get the trophy, you'll need to be awakened once in a regular battle after all those final battle awakenings. Higgledy Gaggle isn't too hard, but it's easy to pass over. Just make a bunch of the same Higgledy type and put them all in your party. Now we move on to the hard achievements. In essence, they're simple, but take up way too much time. Scourge of the Tainted is probably the most enjoyable of these accolades. You have a list of tainted monsters, you just need to kill them all. Pretty simple, but you might need to grind to take on that last monster. You'll also get some unique items from these monsters that will definitely help with your side quests. Bad Dream and Dream Big are related to the Dreamer's Maze side quest. Dreamer's Mazes are essentially random generating dungeons throughout the world with some unique drops and strong monsters. As you go deeper into the dungeon, there's a danger meter that fills up, which increases the difficulty. To get Bad Dream, just fill it up to the 5th level of the danger meter. Bad Dream is a bit harder. There's 9 dungeons across the world and you'll need to clear them all. After you clear the final boss, the 10th dungeon, the Faraway Forest Maze, is unlocked. You'll probably be around level 60 at this point, and the final boss is level 95, so you might need to grind a little bit. What I did is that I got my party some necklaces of enlightenment to get my EXP boosted like crazy, and then I just fought the final boss over and over again. I got to level 92, changed the tactic tweaker to be strong against the forest boss, and beat it pretty easily, so you could probably try around level 80, 85. The next 2 achievements, I swear, decided they wanted to eat away at my soul because of how ridiculously annoying they are. Let's start with the more reasonable one. No Stone Unturned requires you to find every single Higgledy stone in the world and give them the right item to summon a new Higgledy to your party. It's really tough because if you don't go out of your way to find them and make sure to mark them down if you don't have the right item, it's really tough to go back and find them again. I wish Bandai Namco and Level 5 made some sort of sound mini game where it gave you a general idea of where the Higgledy stone was and you had to follow the sound of the Higgledy stone. But, you know, that's wishful thinking. Explore your dungeons thoroughly and mark down locations if you don't have the right item. But for the next achievement, writing them down might not be as useful. God of War is the most annoying achievement I have ever encountered in a video game. It requires you to beat 50 unique skirmishes, but the description just says, overcome 50 skirmishes. You could have just added one word to the description, unique. Then people would have known that they need to clear every challenge at least once. A lot of skirmishes come from the side quests around the world, or even the main quest. And then there's just a large number of open world skirmishes, and they all spawn randomly across the world. If you don't remember which skirmish is which, you could be replaying a lot of battles. The new patch for the game does label the ones you've cleared in blue, but if you're missing a specific skirmish, there's no way to find it aside from playing other skirmishes or reloading your save over and over again. A good tip is if you're looking for a specific kind of skirmish, play the same kind of skirmishes back to back, and with any luck, the one you want should spawn for you. All of this would be much easier if the game just had a skirmish list that showed all of your completed skirmishes and just spaces for skirmishes you haven't cleared yet. But clearly, that is just way too much effort. So to make your life easier, I'll link a spreadsheet that should help you track your skirmishes because apparently it's too difficult to do in this game. But you know, making a monster hunt list, no problem, that's simple. This achievement sucks and I wish you luck. I almost just gave up playing the game based on this one achievement. After all this madness, Just sell your stuff to get the Royal Mint achievement, and then you should get the One True King as your mark of completion. And that's Ni No Kuni 2. Ni No Kuni 2 Revenant Kingdom is a game that challenges the notion of allowing circumstance to guide your fate. Both of the main characters, Evan and Roland, experience extreme grief and loss, and must awaken from that suffering and change their fate to better their lives and the lives of others. Whether that means building something from nothing or standing up to greed and evil, our heroes pursue their goals because their motivations are strong. The idea of revenants is also very present with the motivations of Dalaran. He's a king of a long-forgotten kingdom and seeks to revive what he desires most. His methods, however, cause others to suffer, and his presence looms over Evan as the young king tries to make his goals a reality. It's two different approaches to revenants. One person tries to bring back what can never truly return, while the other accepts his fate and seeks to rebuild his life the way he wants to. It's a very powerful allegory, and the storytelling makes Ni No Kuni 2 stand proudly amongst its Studio Ghibli counterparts. The gameplay is really fun with lots of action packed in. That's not to say that it's perfect. Navigating around menus can be tedious, the kingdom management is kinda clunky, the skirmishes can be really chaotic and annoying, and trying to complete everything without keeping track of it all will make you want to rip out your hair. With all of that said, Ni No Kuni 2 is a very good RPG that has a lot more beneath the surface. Thanks so much for watching this review on Ni No Kuni 2 Revenant Kingdom. If you want to see some more game reviews, I'll leave a full playlist, and there should be a little bit of RPG goodness in there for you to check out. I'm FalseProof, and I'll see you next time.